Hi everyone and welcome back to Splash Page. I'm Sean and today we're going to do something a little bit different. As many of you know, we started this channel to review and break down episodes of Amazon's Invincible. With the show coming to its first season conclusion in only a few weeks, we wanted to be able to expand this channel a bit. So both Andrew and I are taking on different shows to recap and review each week. And we're going to start with our first new show, which is HBO's The Nevers. One of the main reasons I picked this show is because there is no source material. It's all original content, meaning that I don't have anything else to go back and read or research. Everything that is happening on the show is the information we all have together. So, what I'm going to do is kind of take a closer look and try to predict what's going on. And more importantly, call out what the big questions are that we should be looking for answers. To give the most basic level of description of the episode is that on August 3rd, 1896, there was a strange occurrence that ended up giving a small subsection of the population superpowers. We don't have any explanation of why that happened, who got the powers, or what they ended up doing for 3 years, because we immediately skip 3 years into the future and we meet our protagonist, Mrs. True. So now we're going to jump into what I think are the 8 big questions that need to be answered from episode 1. The first one is, who is our protagonist? Who is Mrs. True? At the very beginning of the episode, we see her walking down an alleyway in London, and then jumping into a river to what we have to imagine is commit suicide. That is when the occurrence happens, and then at the end of the episode, we see what the continuation of what was happening in the first scene as she swims out of the water. There are a lot of strange things about her. She's also referred to as the widow. So we know she was married, and we don't really have an explanation of what happened to her husband. We also have a few other really strange things. I would say the fact that she wakes up and goes to sleep on the floor in the room where all of the orphans are sleeping is particularly strange. Finally, when we meet the Beggar King, and they have a tough discussion, the Beggar King threatens to cut Mrs. True's face, and Mrs. True's response is, "This isn't my face." So there's clearly a web of hidden, interesting, mysterious things about Mrs. True that this show is going to touch and make sure we know what's going on with all of them. This isn't something that I'm thinking is going to be answered in a single episode or probably even a single season. So learning more about Mrs. True is going to be a lot of fun. Number 2, why do Mrs. True and Miss Adair always exchange the same pleasantries? And what I mean, if you paid close attention, 3 times during the episode, their interaction went like this.
Mrs. True,
Miss Adair?
you look very fine.
I think so too.
Mrs. True,
Miss Adair?
you look very fine.
I think so too.
I have a suspicion that this is not by mistake, and the 3rd time they do this, Mrs. True actually does not respond with, "I think so too." My guess is it has something to do with Mrs. True's state of mind or who she is at that moment. Similar to how she responded with, "This isn't my face," I think Penet and Mrs. True use those pleasantries to be able to determine who Mrs. True is at that moment. The 3rd question I have is, why did everyone get the powers they did? Some of them seem completely random. A young girl being able to speak 100 different languages, and even at that, not coherently. Another little girl turns into a giant. Mrs. True, her ability to see flashes from the future, all seem like they could be completely random. But then you have a few other of these characters whose powers seem to stem from something that they already knew or something they already worked on. So we have Mary, who is able to sing and identify other touched people. You have Penance, who had some ingenuity before she was touched. Now she's essentially an engineer. The Doctor. He was a doctor before the occurrence, and afterwards he's able to heal people by touching them. Those just seem too close to what they were doing beforehand to not have a direct reason for them getting those powers. Question number 4. What does Melody want from Mary, and what are Mary's powers? My guess is that Melody wants to be able to identify other touched people. Purpose unknown at this point, but it's clear that when Mary sings, only the touched people are heavily affected and not able to move, because you could see in the opera everyone else runs away, but our main characters, all who we know to be touched, have stop and they look at her. And I think that is kind of like Cerebro in the X-Men, able to see all the mutants in the area. So what is Melody going to use the power and the ability to identify other touched peoples for? 5. Who are these creeps? What do they want? We do get the scene later on in the episode where there is a surgeon doing some gruesome testing on what we assume is a kidnapped touched person. He's explaining that he's trying to figure out why they are touched and is drilling into their brain. Is he making more of the creeps with the rags on their face, or is that their face? I don't know, but there's something going on here, and I think it is connected to that first scene where they try to abduct Myrtle. Let's see where this goes. 6. Are we aware of any touched people outside of London, or did this occurrence only happen in London or in England? So it'll be interesting to see how far spread this is, and if this story just sticks to London, or if we find out what happens in the larger world. There are so many references to Catholicism and to Christianity throughout the first episode. Penance's name. You have the fact that Melody talks about Adam and Eve and that God touched her. There are just so many, and I'm curious to see if this show leans more toward religion and God, or if it goes in more of a science fiction, steampunk angle. And then finally, number 8, what the hell is this thing? I'll be honest, when I first watched the pilot episode, going through it with the thought that I might do some video on it, I was up in the air until this scene, because now we do know that the occurrence was something. What this is, we don't know. Is it an alien? Is it something sent by God? No clue, but we do see it fly into the London sky. We know that everyone saw it. We know that only a select few were touched, and we know that at this point only one person remembers that they saw it, and that is Melody, who at the time of seeing it was being committed to an insane asylum. So she was already kind of crazy, and now she's a murderer, and she still remembers seeing it. Why does she remember and no one else does? And why did this object come in the first place? Obviously this is going to be the crux of the show. I wouldn't imagine this gets explained, never mind this season, but maybe ever, depending on how many seasons we get of this show. Overall, I'm super excited to find out more about this. I thought the show was great. It was a lot of fun. Please like, subscribe, and follow if you want more Nevers content. Also, if you are interested in watching Splash Page specifically for Invincible content, that's going to keep happening. We're going to keep recording Invincible episodes. So keep following along as we kind of expand the channel to cover off on more. Well, thanks again. I'm Sean from Splash Page. Have a good day, everybody.